It's the diary of a tired black man. Hey, it's the diary of a tired black man.
Yeah, so I was actually in the neighborhood the other day, and I'm just walking the streets, minding my business, and this Asian guy walks up to me and he stops me and he says, "Yo," like not pretty much "yo," but for lack of a better term, he's like, "Your aura's so bright. I can see, I can see your aura, this sort of thing." And I'm like, yeah, cool, peace. You know what I mean? I'm trying to keep it moving, and he's like, "Oh, no, I could tell you a nice person, and I can see your aura, your good vibe and stuff." And he's like, I'm a guru or something to that effect. And I'm like, okay, cool. So he's like, "Oh, can you give me a couple of minutes?" I'm like, okay, cool. So I don't usually stop too much for people, but I thought, let me give him a couple of minutes. And he starts to say, he could not like be like a medium or like a palm reader, but he says he could read people and stuff. So he's looking at me and he's saying, "No, I can tell that over the past few years you've been trying to find your balance and direction with certain things." Now, I'm not going to go into too much specifics, but some of the stuff he was saying could be construed as true, but then at the same time, I'm kind of like, to be honest, I'm a black man in England, so if you say certain things like that, you kind of shooting your shot. It could just, it could just be true anyway. Like, oh, you got to be facing issues for the past years. Of course, I have, But anyway, I digress. So he then starts to say, I could tell you, you're a great person, great aura, great spirit. But he said somebody has tried to mess you up over the past few years and put some kind of black magic on you. So at that point, my ears kind of pricked up because even yourself, you'll be familiar with some of my past relationships in the sense, and we know some people from these communities, it's been purported that they practice like witchcraft and black magic and that sort of stuff, you know what I mean? And this was something that was said to me years ago about somebody that I had been in some kind of dealings with from the Asian community. So I was saying to the guy, you know what, I was actually dealing with somebody from the Asian community, and I said, I did get that sentiment myself, like perhaps in my spirit, like, you feel like somebody trying to work some kind of science or something on you. So I thought it was quite interesting, him just coming up to me on the street and saying that. Not to say everything he said, was true. So he gave me this little piece of paper and he says, put this paper in the palm of your hand, and, he's kind of screws up this bit of paper. And he's talking to me and showing me some pictures on his mobile phone of him with some white people, which I guess we're supposed to be a testament to the fact that he some kind of guru, because he showed me these like white people that he teaches meditation and so on and so forth. So he's telling me a few things, and he said, they tried to put this kind of black magic on you, but to try and destroy you and make the worst happen to you and stuff. But he's like, you're stronger than that. Like, you kind of overcome it and beat them, and it's kind of like you got your angels and stuff kind of watching over you and that sort of stuff. So I was like, I can dig that. So he's like, you're gonna believe what I'm saying. He was kind of like trying to be not convincing, but he's like, I want to tell you some stuff that's gonna, make you believe that I do have this gift. So I'm kind of, I'm indifferent towards it. I'm like, hey, you gotta do it, you don't, whatever, So we're having this conversation. You say, think of a number and write a number down. So I'm like, here we go. I write down the number 7. So he says, oh, there's a reason we met, yada, 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 blah, and he's saying, so he says, open a bit of paper that he gave me. So I open a bit of paper and it's got some kind of like insignias. Now, ultimately, when I look at it, I'm looking for the angle because it's sort of like a magician or illusionist sometimes where they say, they have these setups. They might say, oh, pick a number between 1 and 3. You pick a number and they've got something that's set up for 1, something that's set up for 2, something that's set up for 3. So I open the paper, I'm sort of examining it, and it kind of looked like a 7, but it looks like it could also be construed as a few other numbers. But he's like, that's the 7 like that you read. So I'm like, cool. So he's sort of like, if I've got anything for him, I'm like, dude, I don't really have any money. But what was quite interesting was, he spent all that time trying to be so convincing and telling me about my so-called aura and this other stuff. And like pretty much as soon as I said to him I didn't have any money for it, he just pretty much walked away and left. So how rude, So my point is, he could be a charlatan, which he most likely is a charlatan, especially with his attitude, and but that doesn't I guess negate some of the stuff that he said. Not to say I'm believing it just because he said it. It did have me thinking, and had me thinking like, people are really out here trying to practice different forms of like witchcraft, black magic and stuff. And he would know potentially because in some communities these things are a bit more prevalent. Some people say in African communities like you might have obeah and different things like that are a bit more, you know, known. Around in some Asian areas, they drop these leaflets and stuff through your door that sometimes say, you know, do you want to cast a spell on somebody, or do you have issues with this or that, and so on and so forth. So I thought it was quite interesting because you know, in life we've got the seen and we've also got the unseen. So I don't want to necessarily completely disregard the unseen realm and the stuff that we don't see, and just, you know, take value in the stuff that we do see. But I thought it was just quite an interesting exchange. Nothing like that's ever happened to me before. But I do want to say, if any of the wicked people out here have been plotting, you know, it gonna come back on them 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 fold, however much, you know. So I just thought that was quite an interesting story. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've had something like that with an Asian guy as well in the city centre, right near where the cathedral is, the top of the stairs. And he said to me, I've got wealth in my future. But to be honest with you, the way I look at it is like, the guy said to you, you've had some kind of trauma in your past recently. Well, we all go through trauma. So by him, he mentioned something that recently you went through some
and
kind
a lot of people know me, know that I walk with a cane. So he was like, oh, the dude talking about medical stuff, and I'm about to say my cane has anything to do with medical reasons, but he could have been clutching at straws. But sorry, bro.
Yeah, what I'd say is that everyone goes through some kind of situation in the past. So by saying that, that's not really groundbreaking, because you can go up to anyone and say that. You can go to any person on the street and say, in the last 5 years, you've had this situation happen in your past, or something bad's happened. Well, everyone's had something bad happen. So it goes back to the old saying, you know, a broken clock is right twice a day, isn't it?
Twice a day.
You know what I mean? So Nostradamus used to make all these predictions, and, you know, a lot of them didn't come to fruition, but a few of them did. And then people clutch on those few that did that did happen. And they say, oh, look, you see, he was right. Well, if you make 1,000 predictions, a couple of them are going to stick. So, I mean, I'm not saying this guy was right or not right, but, you know, I've had someone come up to me and do the same thing, and I got riches in my future, apparently, but I always take it with a pinch of salt. You know, the way I look at it is, you know, I'm becoming more spiritual now, and the more I get in touch with God, the more God starts to speak to me in different realms. And I know God uses people as tools, absolutely, to get his message across to us. So that may have been what was happening there. I don't know.
I mean, that's what he was actually purporting to say. That he was like, you know, God sends people that could meet you and come into your path. And I'm like, yeah, I know all this. You know, It sort of at the same time felt like, even though you said there could be some truth to it, it felt like he was trying to convince me of something at the same time. Maybe just for the financial aspect, but I feel as though, especially if you're doing that sort of claimage of work or ministry or whatever you want to call it, there shouldn't be a fee that you're asking for, and then you know, or feel some type of way if you don't get any money for it, and then just sort of it kind of negated the whole concept of trying to act all nice and stuff. And I know, you know, nobody's perfect, but it was quite an interesting exchange. I mean, you say you've had somebody tell you about riches and stuff. Have you had anybody tell you anything to the effect of black magic, or you've been cursed, or somebody's trying to curse you?
He opened my palm. This is like probably about 2016, maybe, something like that. So when I was still renting in Birmingham, and he opened my palm and he said some stuff, and then he kind of like, with his fingers, he drew in my palm and closed my palm and opened them again. He said, oh, you're going to have riches in your future. Well, I don't know. What do you class as riches for a start? That's a subjective term, isn't it? What is rich? Is 20,000 rich? Is 100,000? What is rich for a start? I don't know. I'm always a little bit skeptical about these things. You know, time will tell. The fact that I still remember it 7 years later, I guess, is something. But, you know, I'm always a little bit skeptical of these kind of things. But like I say, time will tell. You know, time will reveal all. So that's what I would say to that.
It was an interesting exchange. I mean, you guys let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced such a thing. And once again, I do want to say, any wicked powers making any plots or anything, they will be destroyed.
On a related note to what you just said then, the people who go around hating on people, trying to destroy the people, do they really think that the Most High is going to bless them when they do that? You know, do these people need to open the Bible and start reading scriptures? If you start hating on people for no reason, start trying to destroy other people's lives just for your own gains, do they really think they're going to be benefiting any way from that? It's going to have the opposite effect.
Oh yeah,
It's gonna backfire
I
on
mean,
them.
it always does. I mean, the irony is a lot of the times I'm about to say I think I know people who carry certain types of energies and stuff. Sometimes it's people that they don't wish you any well, or maybe you go your separate ways from them, but they don't want to see you just be who you're supposed to be. They can't just live and let live, so they're sort of then fixated on, as you said, trying to see you taken down. But that energy that they're bringing on themselves, I mean, that's one Pandora's box that even they don't want to open.
Exactly. Like, in the Bible it says, you're messing with my children, essentially. So God's saying, people are messing with you, you're messing with God's children. And it's like, God don't play. He's a loving God, but he don't play, If you read the Bible and you read some of the scriptures there, the Bible's actually a very brutal book. And when you actually get down to it, a lot of violence. It's a very violent book is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very violent book, and there's a lot of examples in the Bible where people try to do certain things and they were destroyed, whole towns are wiped out, and people were killed because of some of the wrong actions they made, or worshiping the false gods. So again, that comes from me reading the Bible.
I think that's why it's important, why we need to be back within the right sphere of operating with our power and stuff, so we can definitely hold strong within that. It sort of reminds me of a quote from the great Dr. Martin Luther King, rest in peace, where he said, we don't need no Molotov cocktails. He said, all we need to do is go into these people's stores and say, we got a message from God's children, and say, you ain't treating us right. And if you don't get things right, and he was speaking from a position and a place of power, which people don't understand at the same time. What he was pretty much saying was, that's it. We can stand strong and stand on that with that power and stuff. Being God's children, we got to be able to, hold strong within that, vocalize that as well, project that out as well in a strong way, and no weapons then formed against thee shall prosper.
Exactly.
It's the diary of a tired black man. It's the diary of a tired